Hello, welcome to today's tutorial. Excuse the chaos around me. I have just moved house, so I'm still finding things and trying to figure out how to film and all sorts of stuff. So excuse the chaos and welcome to today's tutorial. So today we are going to be filming the Winter Chameleon. So what's the Winter Chameleon? Well, the chameleon pattern came out last year as part of the Gecko Box Summer 2023. It was the pattern that came out in the box, and the idea was that it has lots of different panels, lots of different pockets and everything else, so every time you make your bag it will look different. I thought it would be fun to create some winter applique pieces that you could use to make your chameleon even more spectacular. So in the applique pieces, we've got a choice to make a gingerbread house, a winter scene. There are trees and mountains and moons and stars and snowflakes and all sorts of different things. Let's have a look at what I made. So here is my Winter Chameleon. This one, obviously I've done a gingerbread house. There are lots of other options. There are shutters for the door and there's a doorstep and all sorts of different things. So I've just chosen a few pieces. Honestly, I would have put everything on there. I've added some fabrics behind the door and the windows just to give it a little bit more interest. We've got some snow across the top and across the bottom, a nice swirly detail here. There's also the option for a round window as well, which I just couldn't fit it in, but it looks amazing. So this is the front of my Winter Chameleon. Let's have a look at this side. So this side, we've got one of the snowflake options. There are lots of different options for snowflakes. This is just one type. And we've got one of our little trees. And of course, that's a pocket. Turning around onto the back. Now, I chose to do a woodland scene. So I've got all the different sizes of trees. All these are in the Winter Applique pack. So they're ready for you. There's another, just a normal little star, some more snow at the top. Turning around onto this side, we've got another snowflake, and this time we've got a lollipop swirl. These swirls come in 3 different sizes. This one is the easiest for me because I don't have a cutting machine. So all of these pieces have been cut by hand. So you'll notice they're a little wobbly in places, but that's okay. This is definitely one of the easiest ones to cut out because it's larger. So there we go. Here, this is my Winter Chameleon. Inside, I'll show you the inside. We've got some Grinch fabric, why not? And I've just done a slip pocket inside. The original chameleon pattern actually has options for a recessed zipper across the top, which I haven't done for today because there just wasn't the time for it. It also has the option for an outside zip pocket, so you could make that, and it has smaller pockets which you could do on the base as well or on the lower of the side. Loads and loads of options. Now you've got even more. So today's video is part of the Marathon Society Sewing Marathon, and there are lots of other amazing YouTube sewists out there sewing the chameleon pattern and the Winter Chameleon pattern all today. So make sure you check out all the other videos. There's so many ideas and so many amazing bags. So thank you so much to everybody who's taking part in the Marathon Society Sewing Marathon. Today's tutorial is not going to be a full tutorial. It is only showing you sewing the applique pieces, but I will also talk through how to add the base of the bag and how to add the pockets onto how to add the base of the bag and how to add the side gussets, because those are always the little details that people find trickiest. So I will cover that, but the rest of this video will be mainly on the applique pieces and generally having fun. If while you're watching this video you're enjoying it, please give it a like and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any other videos. If you would like to buy just the plain chameleon pattern, it is available on the website in English and in French. But you can buy the winter applique pieces on their own, but you can also buy it as a bundle. if you want to sew the complete chameleon bag, there is another video on my YouTube channel, which I will link below for you, so you can do the complete tutorial. Right, let's start sewing this Winter Gingerbread House Chameleon bag. Starting off, you'll see that I have already started putting my outer panels together. So for the front panel, I've used pattern piece 3, which is the complete panel, not put together, it's just one solid piece. For the back panel, I've used the rectangle pieces. Now in the chameleon pattern, as I said before, you have a choice between rectangles, the solid piece, and squares. And you can mix them up. You can do squares on the top, rectangle on the bottom. You can do a rectangle on the top, squares on the bottom. You can do full panels. Depending on whatever it is that you want to do, you can configure your own choices. So for me, I've got the rectangle top, rectangle bottom, and a solid piece. So front, back. I have stitched these two, thread. I've stitched these two together with a 1 centimetre seam allowance, and then I've butterflied open the seam allowance, and I've top stitched along that seam allowance to hold this flat. So after I've sewn those together, I have added my Decaville light. Now I'm using cork, so I don't need a really thick stabilizer, but the Decaville light just gives it that little bit extra stability there. So I'm going to start by showing you how we add the base of the bag. Now logically you think, I've got my 2 outer pieces, I'm going to put my base there and I'm going to sew my outer pieces to my base. No, not in this pattern. In this pattern, your outer pieces are sewn together, and this is a false base. So what actually happens is this goes over the top to make your bag look beautiful, and so you don't actually see this stitching line here. So let's put our outer pieces to one side just for a moment, and I'm going to work on the base. You can see I've already added my purse feet. If we turn over, sorry, a little grubby, you'll see I've added my Decaville heavy. Now this Decaville heavy is really, really important because it gives the structure to the base of your bag. The bag base and my purse feet already added. I've also found the midpoint of the 2 shorter edges. That's really, really important. We're going to need those in a minute. I'm going to take some double-sided tape. I'm going to add that to the side of my Decaville heavy along the long edges. You might need a little bit more than this. We're just going to see if we can get away with this. It's just to hold it temporarily. There we are. I've taken the tape off. So you can just see my double-sided tape there. I'm going to fold in the long edges using the double-sided tape. So this is temporary. It's fine. This side as well. Just to hold it in place along those edges. There we are. I'm going to bring back my outer panel, and using my midpoints along the short edges, I'm going to line that up with my center point here. That's clipped. And I'm going to use the sewing machine, and starting here on one of the shorter edges, because that's then going to be in my seam allowance, I'm going to use a 3.5mm stitch length, 3mm or 1/8 of an inch from the edge, and I'm going to stitch across, down the long edge, across the shorter one, back up the long edge, and across here, back stitching really, really well beginning and end. Being careful and mindful of the fact that at the shorter edges, your stitching won't be seen, but along the long edges it will be, so make sure that you take your time, sew slowly, make your stitches beautiful along those longer edges. So that's the base sewn in place. Okay, that's our false base. So now we know exactly what our front and back panel is going to be. Sorry, I've switched this around, so let me turn that back the other way. So front, back, solid piece, rectangles. The next thing we're going to do is lay out our applique pieces in the way that we want them. Now remember, this is the top, and this is the top, okay? Because when we put them together, it's going to go like this. So make sure that you get your applique pieces round the right way. We don't want anything upside down. I'm going to start with the front. So let me bring this down here. I need a longer table or a bigger camera. So the front here, I'm going to make into my gingerbread house. First applique piece I have is the snow that forms the top edge. Now my seam allowance for my bag is 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch. So I need to make sure that my snow, icicles, whatever we're going to call it, is 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch from the top and centered really, really well. Now I think it's probably slightly over. We can always trim that down, that's fine. Put that there. Then I'm going to lay out all my other applique pieces, the door, the windows, the shutters, my Christmas trees. I'm going to put them all into the place that I want them to be, bearing in mind that I also have some strap tabs that need to go here, because if I don't have my strap tabs on, I can't hold my bag. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out the strap tabs in the place that they need to go. The measurements for that can be found in your chameleon pattern instructions. And then I'm going to lay everything else out on that front panel. So here is my ideal layout of all the pieces that I've got. Now you'll notice I'm missing one of my pink shutters. I don't know where it's gone. It's on my table somewhere. I can't find it. Worst case, I'll cut another one. So we are going to have one here. So I will need to move these over a little, play around with it a little more. But this is my idea. So I've got my snow at the bottom, doorstep. I will need to make sure all of this is centered. So I'm going to fold that in at the middle, find my center point and sew that on. My strap tabs, you'll see, are the same color as my lovely gingerbread colored cork. I'm going to sew on the ice and snow first and then put the strap tabs on top of that to make sure that they are in the correct place. Now on the pattern pieces, there are the markings for the strap tabs to make sure they go in the correct place. So you can stitch on your snow first, then place these on the top. It'll be absolutely fine. That little heart sneaks in there just in the middle. And you'll see behind the windows and the door, I've just put some fabric, and that's to make it a little bit more interesting. Obviously, because the applique pieces have the cutouts here, you could use any fabric at all. I've got these cute little Christmas puddings that are in here and just a lovely bright red behind the door there to make everything pop. I've got a couple of trees either side of the door, the doorstep, some snow at the bottom. This snow at the bottom can go right up against the bag base that we've put on already, because as we know, that will be the top edge now, which is why it's super important to complete the bag construction up to this point before you start adding your applique pieces, because otherwise they might end up underneath here and we don't want that. That would be a disaster. So I'm going to take this across the sewing machine and I'm going to sew all my pieces in place. I have stuck this down with some of my sew line glue. It's just one of these pen ones that we use. I usually use this when I'm sewing zips or something like that because it holds everything in place really, really well. So we'll sew on the snow at the top first and then our strap tabs, because those are the most important things at the top. Then I'm going to sew on the snow at the bottom. Make sure that my door is centered because that's the next most important thing. And then make sure that my windows are at the same level. So I'll speed this up a little bit because obviously you don't want to sit and watch me do all of those things, but I will show you how I sew everything on. Okay, so you'll see I've attached these and I've also added the one on this side. I don't want to keep having to swap thread, so I'm going to try to do as many of the white things first, or the ones that need white thread, and then I'll switch my thread over because otherwise it's just going to take forever. So I'm really happy with how that's looking. Now, I also, while I was doing this, I also actually did one of the pockets for the side. So I've got a snowflake here and a swirly lollipop. So I've done that one. So I'm just going to bring in the other pocket for the other side. I'm going to add on a snowflake, and I think I'm going to add a tree as well, just to make it a little bit fun. So the tree obviously is going to need a different colour thread, so we'll put that to one side for the moment, and I'm going to show you how I attach the snowflakes. Now they are quite intricate, but it's just take your time and go through it step by step. So let's move this out of the way. I have already attached the lining for my pocket. All the instructions are in the chameleon pattern to do that. Let's just take my sew line glue again because it holds it really well. Just put a little bit on there just to hold it in place. Now, I think I'm going to put my snowflake here. Need to make sure I'm staying away from the edge. I've already top stitched here, so I know that's the top of my pocket. Just need to keep my 1 centimetre seam allowance, so stick that there. Let's just double check with the tree. That will be okay there. I also need to stitch the bottom here. So for the moment, I need to remember that I need a 1 centimetre seam allowance, and then I'm going to have to top stitch. So stay away from that a little bit. There we go, quite happy with that. Let's sew this on. Okay, so fold the lining out of the way. I'm going to start on one of the straighter parts of the snowflake. Oh, we're in reverse. Let's start sewing. There we are, so that's all sewn on. Probably not the best stitching, but it's fine. I'm happy with it. So let's see what else we need to put onto our gingerbread house. So next I think I'm going to start with the doors and windows, because I need to make sure that my door is centered correctly on my main panel, because then everything else can go off of that. So keep that over there for a minute. Ooh, let's move our pocket out of the way for now. So you'll see, here's my door, and these are my windows. And I've just got some scrap pieces of fabric to put behind them just to make it a little bit more interesting. So this is just a red cotton woven. I'll turn over my door and just use a little bit of glue. This is just going to hold my cotton fabric in place while I'm sewing. Oops, sticky. Let's get that centered. I need to make sure that I don't have any overhang, because obviously this is a woven fabric, so it will fray. So I need to make sure that when we sew it, there's nothing on the outside. Okay, we do the same with the windows. Got my little Christmas puddings for the windows. And again, a little bit of glue. Let's find the midpoint first. Fold in half. Put that up. There we go, there's my midpoint. So I know that that's okay about there. Let's stick that on before we go to the machine, so we know it's not going to move. Okay, and let's find our little Christmas trees for now, our little winter trees. Just check that everything fits before I sew that on. Then we've got this swirly piece to go over the door and our cute little heart. Now I was going to put some shutters on the windows, but actually looking at it I think it's quite nice without. I don't think I'm going to include those today. I'm just going to leave it as it is. So my door is in place, that's perfect. I think what I might do is see if I can stick down these other pieces and do them all at once. So I'm really happy with that. That's all stuck down. Just giving it a couple of minutes just to let that glue settle. Now, because I still have my white thread in my machine, I'm actually going to do the snow first and this swirly detail with the heart. I'm going to do those first, then I'm going to swap out my thread and then go around and do the trees and the door and the windows in a brown thread. And also the trees. So I think that'll be much more efficient doing it that way. Let's hope everything stays in place, ready for me to do that. So there we are, that's all the white pieces sewn on. Not necessarily my best sewing. I would probably suggest with something like this, maybe dropping down your stitch length. At the moment I'm sewing with a 3.5, maybe a 3 would have been better because of these tight curves. So bear that in mind when you're sewing. Now I'm going to change out my thread into my brown thread and I'm going to sew my window, door and my trees. Okay, there we are. So I have sewn on the strap tabs and all of the pieces that we need. Now you'll notice when I did the windows, I don't know how well you can see this actually, I've just done a cross through the center because that's enough, they're not that big. But when I came over to the door, I've actually sewn around each of the rectangle frame parts just to make sure that that's extra secure. Now, let's start on the other side. So I have already got my snow across the top here. I'm sorry if you can hear my dogs outside, they're making weird noises, they're all playing. They're a little crazy today and yeah, sorry, I apologize if you can hear them. Right, let's bring in, so at the back of my bag I'm going to do like a winter scene. So I've got lots of different shapes of trees and I'm just going to arrange them in a way that I think works. So I've got two of the larger ones. Now, all these different size trees are in the applique set. And let's see what we've got. I think that works out quite well. Now, obviously, depending on your machine will depend on how easy or difficult it is to layer up what you're doing. If you're using cork, it does get a little bit thick if you do it like this, but it's okay. There we go, I quite like that. I think that works quite nicely. I do have one little star, which I think I might put somewhere in the middle. I quite like that. So I'm going to take this to the sewing machine. It's not a huge amount of fuss or anything to sew this. It's just stitching around each of the trees. So I'm going to start with the big ones, then I'm going to just layer up from there. So let's take these off for the moment. I'll probably forget what it was that I was going to do. Making sure, of course, that we are within our 1 centimetre seam allowance. We don't want to go over that. Let's find the trusty glue. Now I did forget that I had a star to sew on, so I am going to have to change my thread again. Never mind. I'm going to sew these ones first and then I'm just going to keep adding. I'm not going to change my camera angle again because you know what I'm doing, and so I'm just going to go ahead and sew those all on. Okay, so this is the bag completed. I've added the strap tabs on this side and the little star. All the trees are on there. I'm really, really happy with this. So now let's bring back the side panels. The side panels, I have attached the pockets to the side gussets. You can see 1, 2. I've done this tree as well. I did it at the same time as I did the other trees. I'm really happy with those. When you're sewing the swirls, it's best to sew the white circle on first, then get your red, stick those on top with whatever glue you're using, and then stitch those. I found that to be the easiest way to do those. Okay, right. I'm going to show you how I attach the side gusset to the main bag. Now, as I said before, this is not a full tutorial, but there are a couple of little bits that I know sometimes can be a little confusing. So I'm just going to show you how I do this. So you'll see my pocket is not right at the bottom. The same as with our base here, we've got a 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and that will allow our pocket to sit as the bottom edge of the bag. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find the midpoint across the bottom. Take my scissors and just make a little snip so you can see. There we go. Actually, it's quite a big snip. Never mind. Right. It doesn't matter which side we go on. I'm going to go on this side. So main panel, right side up. Pocket panel, right side down. And we're going to line up this slit that we've just made with the center slit that we have on our main bag. You can see with this where we did this earlier. We're just going to line those up. And I'm going to clip that in place. There we are. Now, I've got stabilizer on here, and I know that my stabilizer is 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch smaller than my outer panel. So I actually don't need to make any markings. However, if you're not using a stabilizer or it's difficult to see, you need to make a mark 1 centimetre up, 1 centimetre in. That's 3/8 of an inch up, 3/8 of an inch in, and make a mark. Now for me, I know it's this corner here. And the same on this side. I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and I'm going to start stitching at that corner point. I'm going to stitch all the way across and I'm going to stop at this corner point of my stabilizer because those are my 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch points that I need to mark. So I'm going to do that and then I'm going to sew a second row of stitching just inside the first one, inside the seam allowance, less than 1/8 of an inch, just ever so slightly inside, and that's to give some extra support to my panels so as I don't get any stitches pulling. There we go. Now I don't know how well you can see that because it is dark brown on black. That was a bit silly of me really. But my stitches start here and end here. Okay, so they're not going right the way to the ends. You can see that's still not sewn. In fact, you can see my stitching there and you can see it again on this side here. Now the next thing I need to do is I'm going to take my scissors. I'm going to fold back the side gusset. Ooh. So as I can see my bag base underneath. So this is my side gusset, this is the bag base, and this is the side of my bag. I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to do a snip alongside the bag base. I'm not cutting the bag base, I'm not cutting the side gusset, I'm only cutting this front panel here, just a slit there up to where the stitches are. So that 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch, I'm just snipping up to there. I really should have different scissors. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to fold this back. Here's my bag base. And I'm just going to make a snip in the side, 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch into this panel. Okay, hope you can see that. The next thing I need to do is I'm going to match this top corner of my side gusset with the top corner of my bag. So we're going to twist it, so it's going to go right sides together. Okay, right sides together. I'm just going to flip this around to make it a little easier. I'm going to clip all the way along that side. And now you can see where we've made that slit, it folds nice and neatly at that bottom edge. So I'm going to clip that, and then I'm going to do 2 rows of stitching, 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch from the edge. And there we are, that's stitched in place. 2 rows of stitching. I'm sorry you still can't see, but starting at the top edge and stopping at that point that we made at the bottom, the 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch mark, and that's 2 rows of stitching. So I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'll lay it flat for you. This obviously now is standing up. So matching up this top corner of the side gusset with the top corner of the back here. Line those up. And we've already made that slit at the bottom, so it means that it will turn. There we go. Clip that all the way along. And I'm going to do the same thing again, sewing a 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch seam allowance from the top edge all the way down, starting and stopping at that 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch point that we made at the bottom, 2 rows of stitching. Now what I did do is where my pocket is, here and here, because obviously our pocket's on an angle, I have back stitched over that just to give a little bit extra security, because obviously when you're putting things in and out of your pocket, those points will be under a little bit of stress. So just back stitch, just a couple of stitches where you feel that your pocket is. There we are, so that's stitched in place on both sides. I've checked at the bottom here in this bottom corner to make sure I have no holes, nothing strange going on. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to do exactly the same thing with this side. I'm going to find the midpoint of the base of my side gusset. I'm going to match that with the midpoint here. Starting and stopping at 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch point. I'm going to stitch 2 rows of stitching, snip into the front and back panel, 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch, and then I'm going to join the sides together. There we are, so that's all sewn into a little box, and let's turn it through. Now if you're sewing, just double check in the corners, make sure you haven't got any holes there. I did have a little hole in one of these corners, so I have re-sewn that. Let me try and turn this in. It's a little bit challenging because obviously we are using Decaville Light, we're using cork, so I'll just turn that through. I've just realised, trim down the seams. Okay, seams trimmed at the top. Let's try that again. Push it through. Now, if you find this quite difficult, you could choose to do a drop-in lining. Obviously, so long as you haven't done the recessed zipper. This one doesn't have a recessed zipper, so we could do a drop-in lining if we wanted to. Save us turning that bag back through. Okay, move that to one side for a second. Here is my lining now. I've already pre-made my lining because we're limited on time for the sewing marathon, and we've got an inside pocket. I've left a hole open at the base, but the construction of this is exactly the same as the outer, so you can see where we have cut that corner and sewn it all together. Now let's put this bag together. So, outer, right side out, lining, wrong side out. It's much easier to do this. Now, if you have the zip on the back, we haven't done the zip today, but there is an option for the zip. If you've done that, then you will need to make sure that your slip pocket is on the opposite side, because what you don't want to happen is end up with lots of things in the inside pocket, lots of things in the outside pocket, and then things start to get a bit bulky on one side. So I don't have that problem, so I'm going to put my slip pocket on the back. Take my bag, push that in there. I'm going to make sure that my D-rings, my rectangle rings, are pushed out of the way, because we don't want to sew over those. If you want, you could put some tape on there to hold them down. Right, I'm going to match up my corners first. We don't have to worry about butterflying the seams too much because we have trimmed down the top edge of those corners. So I'm going to put one there. Put on there. Just match up the seams as you go and line everything up. So I'm going to finish clipping all the way around. When I've done that, I'm going to stitch around the top with a 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Then I'm going to go around again just to make sure that the stitches don't pull. Okay, so I have jumped ahead a little bit. So I've turned my bag through, I've top stitched across the top, and I've added the handles on that I pre-made, and I've just used some rivets to put those on with. And doesn't it look amazing? So here we are. This is the front of our gingerbread house. One side. I'm so excited. The back looks fantastic. This actually, if I'd thought about it, the top here would have been brilliant in like a midnight blue or something like that. That would have been great to use the two-tone. And the other side. And of course, the amazing Grinch fabric inside. Obviously, I haven't included the recessed zipper, but if you did choose to use the recessed zipper, you could have some real fun adding all sorts of different things on there. And the original chameleon pattern actually comes with two-tone straps, so you could really use that to make some details. Well, I hope you've enjoyed watching this, and I can't wait to see your winter chameleons out there in social media world. Don't forget to tag me in any of your posts. I would absolutely love to see them. Have a fabulous winter.